Looks like it is. And you know what that means? It's Thursday. It's time for Geek Speak. And just by sheer happenstance, it happens to be the two of us once again. And
two
this time,
weeks in a row.
yeah, I know. I don't think we've ever had that happen. But
People are going to
it's
get
just,
sick of us.
yeah, well, they'll be wanting us more after they haven't seen us for a while. You know,
True.
absence makes the heart grow fonder. But again, we are going to be continuing our discussion from last week. Now that we talked about who is good for Google Ads, now we're going to be moving on to how to start picking your keywords using the keyword planner from Google, and also how to start tracking your results so you can actually get an ROI and make sure that you're not just throwing money into the void of Google Ads. Um,
Mm,
yeah. And I
the
mean,
Lord.
the same principles will also apply to if you're doing Facebook ads or really any ads, that you should be doing your conversion tracking because they're really good at taking your money.
Yeah, there's a void in all of them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And they'd like you to really not think about it too much. But also to introduce ourselves, my name is Phelan. I work at Seymour Digital Media, where we focus on search engine marketing.
And I am Greg McKinnon with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full service website graphic design and digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Perfect. Okay. So I think let's start off with the keyword planner and picking your keywords. So when we started this, so when we were starting with prepping the notes, we had talked about one of the really cool features is you can just straight up put in a URL, and it doesn't even need to necessarily be your own. So it's really good for like a little bit of competition research. And so the really good thing about doing it where you're using just like a domain, not even giving it a keyword to filter down, is that will let Google know what it thinks about your website. So it scans through your site, and then it's going, hey, you think that you're going to be showing up for like air duct cleaning services, and they're like, we think you're a carpet cleaning company. That could also help with you to like fix messaging on your website, figure out where they got that from. And then it'll also improve your SEO because you're honing it, so it makes it easier for Google to know what's going on with your site.
Hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things that I should experiment with more is audiences, like very
Mm,
specific audiences.
yeah.
So I don't typically set that stuff up for the minor Google ads and things that I do for tracking purposes. So I actually I will probably learn a little bit from you today.
Yeah, yeah, and the audience is definitely that's going to be a big one that builds out over time, and putting audiences over top of like broad match, because I used to have broad match modified. Now they're just like, no, you're getting pure broad, and like who knows what's showing up. And the only way to really contain that is to have the keywords, and so you could pick some like very vague keywords at the top, and then put an audience over top so it doesn't go wild, and that like I'm selling car parts and I want people interested in automotive, stuff. And so that way you're keeping it a little bit constrained where Google's not going to be able to like, oh, you meant auto healthcare and like just like random stuff. Cause if you let Google go wild, they will spend your money.
In a way, it is better because you are defining a specific audience. If
Yeah.
you define it, which you need
You
to,
sh-
or else, like you said, it'll go wild. But over the old way, I think this broad match with an audience over it is actually a better way to target.
Especially when you're first getting started, because what you think your messaging is and what people respond to might not be the same thing. And so finding out what keywords people are actually typing in or what they're typing in, because also the part that pairs with what we're talking about, and so is that the search terms. So when you go to keywords, and then there's going to be a tab underneath of it called search terms, it will give you 6 times the data now than it used to. So you can get way more information about what is actually going in, and also which ones you want to negative out. So there might be ones about like, jobs, the cheapest, the words like that, that generally you want to negative out anyway. And so that will let you know pretty quickly that you should, what you need to constrain. And so that's definitely one that kind of pairs with it nicely as you kind of figure out, like, again, with the keyword planner, it's going to give you some ideas and it's going to get some vague notions. And this is a way for you to take that kind of expand it out and then kind of tighten it up again as you start to grow and build and figure out even what's converting.
And for everyone watching, I remember at one point the keyword planner was available to anyone, but I believe that changed at some point that you needed to have a Google Ads account to get access to the keyword planner. Is that still the case, or can anyone use the keyword planner now?
So anyone can use the keyword planner. You do need to set up a Google Ads account, but and you can even do that without even creating a campaign, putting in your credit card. You can avoid all of that. They do not make it obvious. They do not make it clear. If
Yeah.
people do want that, just ask about that in the comments, and we have a giveaway, a PDF that we can give you guys that will actually go through those steps to do that. But yeah, you do need to have an account, but it doesn't need to. Um, they they set it up in such a way that they lead you down a little like wizard builder, and you're just like, and if you're not very careful, they're yeah,
You
you'll
got a
all of a
smart
sudden have a
campaign going.
yeah, you'll be building a campaign all of a sudden, and it'll be a smart campaign, and you'll just be
Yeah.
like, what happened here? And yeah, they're very good at leading you down the like, oh no, you don't want to make choices. You want to give us some vague instructions and put in your credit card details. Um, yeah, it's definitely they have made it way more cumbersome to not to avoid that. They yeah, it's not very obvious at all where to go.
The thing that gets me about them, because they do plug it a lot, they make it sound so easy and that you will be so successful as soon as you like sign up and go through
Yeah,
these like minimal steps and then give us your credit card, that like magic will happen.
yeah.
So people get sucked into that and it drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's definitely one, and my favorite is, of course, like clients that say, "Oh yeah, no, I tinkered a little bit with Google Ads," and they set up like a smart campaign, which is is definitely good for getting your feet wet if
Hmm.
you're going down that road and just kind of getting around the mechanics. But like, definitely do not watch that budget because they'll burn through it. But yeah, it's definitely one that the smart campaigns are all like huge black boxes. So what we've been talking about, picking your keywords, finding out what the search terms are, that none of that, none of that is on the cards for you. And it's even worse with their new Performance Max, where basically the only input we got back, we were auditing a client, and the only thing we found in it is that they're like, yeah, your ad stuff, like the text that they submitted and the photos, they're like, yeah, it's really poor quality. And like they're like, they do not tell you anything else about what you showed up for, where you showed up, like what audiences were showing up with these. Like none of that was on the table. So it's definitely one where watch out. Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
so keyword planner, back to get
yeah,
back
yeah,
on track here. It's available to anyone with an ads account, and you
yeah,
can have an ads account without ads running.
yeah, or even a
You said there
campaign.
was something you were going to share if people wanted to get access. Is that
Yeah, yeah. So just if you
instructions?
just leave a comment wherever you're watching, I'll try and find it and respond. I have access to pretty much all of them. So yeah, just let us know because I don't have it right on hand for that part.
So the keyword planner for me, I'll ask you this question, is something that I used often initially when setting up campaigns and sort of forget about as as time goes on and campaigns are running. Do you have a better approach to using keyword planner? Is it something you're in there every month looking for things, and would you say that should be the way you use it, is to continue looking?
That's a really good question. There are some tools in there that I haven't used, like forecasting. And generally, I don't use a lot of because there are some tools that do what you're talking about. Generally, I find that once the campaigns are going and we're getting some traction, like we're getting clicks, we're getting conversions, then I don't go back to the keyword planner as much, mostly because I'm then doing battle with like the search terms and filtering those out and getting the most out of the campaigns that are existing.
Yeah.
Um, Generally though, like I always get kind of weird when they do the forecasting because I'm like, where are you pulling this from? How are you able to predict people's clicking habits? Like I know that they're like they have some predictive elements to what they're doing, but I always get a little wary about any of the tools that they have that are designed to do what you're saying. I generally just work with what's existing, and maybe if we've got a new campaign or we're launching a new product, I might do some more research based on that, and it'll be
Yeah.
specific to that new campaign that we'll be launching. But it's definitely one where um, once the campaigns get going, there's so much information that you're going to get so much feedback you're going to get from that generally the keyword planner isn't as useful. But I mean, I spend pretty much all my time with it at the start, figuring
That's
out.
what I figured. I use
Yeah,
it. I use it the same way. I just didn't know
yeah,
if others used it more, even while the same campaigns were running to do like introduce new keywords, or if they stuck to like Google's suggested added keyword, options that they pop up once in a while.
yeah. No, it's totally it's a good one because I mean, there's add so many tools inside of that system that there's like uh yeah, there's a ton that you can kind of get lost down a rabbit hole. So that's the other reason why we try not to like go, chasing shiny new object to think it's going to be the cure all and try to stay focused on the ads because they can you can die with analysis paralysis inside of the ads platform.
So, other than using the Google Keyword Planner to do your research while you're setting up a campaign, are there any other things with the planner that you would suggest or are good to use it for?
Yeah. So, well, one of the big ones that you're going to get, and this is why I kind of started with using the whole website rather than specific keywords, is that sometimes what you think will be a winning keyword might not be. And this is
Mm.
one of the big reasons why, they have a bunch of data on when you're in there, you're looking for things that are going to be low or medium competition. They're going to be less than 100 plus searches in a month. So meaning that it's 100 or even 1,000. If you can get that and it to be low and medium competition, that's golden. And generally, we find that when we're using it, it's a kind of like a showing what when you talk to your client or when you're thinking about it yourself, what people are typing into Google and how much they're searching for that. You might get disabused of that idea pretty quickly once you get the data that Google's giving you and saying like, actually, you're getting 10 searches a month, but this other term that's related is actually getting 1,000.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of like kind of demystifying a little bit on what people are actually typing into Google and figuring out from there, oh, okay, it turns out that like our messaging wasn't the one that we were expecting. So, hey, maybe we should focus on this keyword or maybe have like one ad group that's like, all this really technical stuff that like, yeah, those people that type it in are actually worth targeting. But like the majority of the ad spend is probably going to be on these like, top of funnel. They're just learning about problems and you're just there to like go like, hey, have this problem, this is a good solution.
Yeah, and I want to make sure people knew that one of the reasons why you want to get access to Keyword Planner, even if you're not running ads, is because it's not just ad related. It's the search volumes for your or whatever keywords that you are wanting the volumes on. So even if you're not doing ads, but you're doing a lot of SEO, local or those types of things, that information is the exact same. So you want to use the keyword planner to find out that information, figure out if you are optimizing your website with the correct keywords that you've identified and things like that. It's not strictly for Google Ads.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's why, like I said at the very top, you can find out that what Google thinks your website's about. So that can
Mm-hmm.
also be helpful for a myriad of different, like, messaging, SEO, like, all these other things about, like, I mean, it's coming from the horse's mouth, right? Because Google's the one who's going to be showing you up. So the more you use a Google tool, and especially one that has any data, because ultimately Google's the one that's running the search algorithm. And so no matter if you're using any third party tool, Google's still, like, they're the first party for all intents and purposes. And if they're telling you this information, that's closer to gospel than anything else you're going to find out there, because, I mean, they're the ones that are ultimately showing your ad or your website when you do SEO.
And you were just saying you can really come across certain words that you might think are the ones to use, and an alternate is actually searched a lot more. Besides that type of a thing that you could find when you are looking up the terms, what would you say would be the best ones to pick? Low volume, medium, high volume?
That's a good question. It's definitely one. The problem you'll run into with picking something super targeted that's low volume is because things like broad match have come up. The broad might encompass those. So even if you're not necessarily bidding on it, your competition might have bid on it because they're just doing broad. And so the getting super targeted these days it's tricky. It used to be that you would do an exact campaign and, like, I want to show up for that exact keyword, but now with Google playing fast and loose with even exact and how the broad works, is that you're gonna want to go for something that's a little. I'm gonna go with higher search volume personally. That's what I aim for, and lower competition. Like, if you can get low competition, great, because that means that those weird overlaps of broad where they're like you're both bidding on a keyword, like similar keywords, and then you're gonna show up in the same auction, and just a way to get around that to yeah, it's definitely one where there's going to be low competition, so you're not having to fight with everyone and who's going to be bidding on it. If that kind of makes sense, it's a little confusing because I'm trying not to, like, dip into, like, oh, what's the auction going to work like, and I'm just, but yeah, generally higher search volumes, even if it's not your favorite keyword, because you might show up with a broad campaign and find those other keywords that are a little bit lower competition.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've talked enough about keyword planner. You figure we should maybe move on to some conversion tracking and
Yeah,
setup?
yeah. So yeah, that because now, like, you're gonna want to not only have the keywords, but you also want to make sure that before you even launch your campaign, that you have the conversion tracking, because yeah, way too many times have we seen the conversions not set up or tracked properly, and the client just kind of shrugs their shoulder and say, I don't know if this is working, and you find out
Pretty sure there's no conversion tracking in smart campaigns.
there you have to set them outside, so the conversions are set either campaign level or account level, and
Well, I just mean like people who have smart campaigns
oh yeah,
running probably don't have conversion tracking running
it's a
because it's not something that also gets set up.
by default they're not like,
Right.
well, I'm set up this campaign, and Google assured me that I can comically dust my hands and walk away from this situation. um yeah, it's definitely one. Yeah, I agree with you where it's, don't take their, yeah, you're gonna want to set it up. There's it used to be way more complicated to set up, but with Tag Manager, honestly, it's pretty straightforward these days, because you just need to know the action. So, um, you know, this thank you page, if it loads, then when they get to this page, then load the, Google Ads conversion tracking. You can do it as simple as that and make it only when this specific page loads. The tools are nice and pretty abstracted. I mean, it is a little technical when you first kind of get started. It's a little overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the other thing is, nowadays there's like tons of YouTube channels that go over how to set it up, how to do the conversion tracking, how to even, like, and then, from beginner to like the most advanced. You can do there's so many more resources now than when I got started, and you'd just be like, trying to Google something and like no one had any content about it. So it's definitely, yeah, these days Tag Manager, definitely the way to go. You're still wanting to, I would still recommend setting up, if you set up your Google Ads conversion tracking, you can also use the same trigger, meaning like anytime this specific event happens, you can also do that for events for Google Analytics 4 and UA. So you pretty much do get three birds with one stone by basically sending the signal to the three platforms, Universal Analytics, GA4, and Google Ads, that when this event happens, like I want to track it with all three. So it's definitely super easy like that you can just kind of reuse the same little snippets that you have inside your Tag Manager.
Yeah. So in this scenario, obviously, people need to have Google Analytics set up first
Yeah.
with both your Universal Analytics and your GA4 Analytics
Yeah.
in there. And
Yeah.
once you have that, the third component is what you were saying is the Tag Manager. And once you have Tag Manager integrated, your Tag Manager is the only snippet of code that has to be inserted in your site. Once that
Yeah.
happens, your tag manager can be used to control everything and insert on your website whatever snippets you need through the tag manager.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think of it as kind of like a conductor, and it's kind of like telling people like, okay, now it's your turn. Okay, now I need you to come here because this event happened. Okay, you're going to be here now. And like it's kind of orchestrating when the tags are firing. And then generally it's going to have like Universal Analytics or GA4 just running all the time, right? Because there's no point, there's no page where not running it isn't beneficial. So those two are pretty much running the whole time.
And so, with all of that set up, people will then use Google Tag Manager to set up any conversion tracking they want within their site,
Yep.
and it'll be inserted, and then it'll just be reported on your UA or GA4 analytics. Um,
Yeah. So after the fact, what you can do is do reporting, and then just say like, "Oh, we got a conversion here." The good thing about setting up with the same trigger and having it set up for the two analytics is when you get into multi-channel funnels, like so you're getting to see the whole journey, and you may see that, like we've had it for a couple of clients where the ads were the first step, and then the person found them through SEO, and then converted. So having being able to track all those steps along the journey, super valuable for you as like a marketer, because you can still show value, because not every most people are busy. They kind of go like, oh right, I was going to look up that thing about air duct cleaning, okay, let me just Google that, and then it was like, oh, I remember going to this person's website. And so you're getting people on the repeated steps in the journey, which is that's the most common way that you're going to see it in Google Analytics these days.
mhm.
Um, and so the Google Ads conversion tracking also sends a signal that because you set like a window that like within 7 days, if this person's clicked on this ad and later on, I want to still give some attribution to that, because that was the step along the journey. And so for us, we kind of give it distribute the attribution evenly, because we don't really think of like personally, we're not like, oh, this last step, that's the only step that matters. It was like, well, there's a whole bunch of steps along the way, so why don't we track all of them? And they're all kind of valuable, and it gives credit for everyone along the path.
Yeah, and a lot of people shopping online will come back and
Yeah.
complete a purchase later, like a couple hours later, even days later, right? People
Yeah.
do research online. We know this. They're figuring out what it is they want, and they might have found something on your site and gone through a process but not completed it, but then did more research and then came back and decided that's the one I'm going to get. So they come back to your site and complete a purchase. So you do want that to be tracked as its own individual conversion,
Yeah.
from when it first happened, hours or days before to when it was completed.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say, and then in this, I would say there's one little distinction, and it's a big kind of argument that there's no really right or wrong answer. There's just personal opinions. But if you're doing something like e-commerce, that some people are like, well, each step in that journey from add to cart to start checkout to complete purchase are all can be considered goals. I don't subscribe to that. I consider it only when like they've made the purchase and they see that thank you page. That's to me the goal, and everything else are events leading up to that goal. Um, and so, and that's just a personal preference.
I,
There's
I
not.
would I would agree with that. Although each event leading up to the goal is important in itself. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh,
you do want to track and analyze how many people added something to their cart
yeah.
versus how many people actually completed the transaction. Because if you have like a 75% drop off, then you're looking, that information is valuable because you're like, okay, well, why is 75% of the people adding something to their cart and not completing an order? Like, is my shipping too high? Is there an issue
Yeah.
with the process of checking out? Like, that in itself, seeing that information could be really valuable to figuring out what is happening on your site.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Like a e-commerce funnel analytics. Yeah, dude, that is very important. Discussion, I'd say, just for another time, just because like we could totally go down a rabbit hole right there.
Yeah, no, I
With that.
just wanted to show that as an example of why the events leading up to
Oh
the
yeah.
actual goal are important as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, it's definitely knowing your funnel and knowing where your drop off is the most is definitely one you want to be paying attention to. And that's again why the conversion tracking is so important, is because once you've set it up as goals in conversions and you've got that in your analytics, you can go back and be like, hey, I've had to like spend a bunch of money on Facebook retargeting ads to get people to go back to this point in the funnel. Okay, that's kind of weird. Why is it like you can start to make associations with particular channels that you're putting money into and how they affect you.
Hmm.
Um, in the last couple of minutes, there is one thing that we did discuss, which is related to the tag manager, which is setting up server-side Google Tag Manager. And
Yeah, I think I wouldn't mind like a high level overview of
yeah,
what this is, and this potentially could be a future topic on its own for people to understand what it is and where this is going.
yeah, 100%. Especially if you are doing Facebook ads, running it through a server-side Google Tag Manager. Um, Basically, just so we'll go through the high level of it. What it is that Tag Manager generally loads with your website. Then it, like said with the conducting, it then reaches out to people and says, okay, I need you to now get this tag, and it does it. It loads to the website. Then it reaches out to a third party to load the analytics JavaScript, including Facebook Pixel. That's one of the big issues that it had with the iOS update. So what the server side does is it says, okay, I know that everything I'm going to need to load is going to be these scripts here. Okay, I'm going to load them in the backend so that when someone loads the website, it's all coming in one go. And so it doesn't, and so it seems like it's all from one party, even if it actually is going to then go to a third party afterwards. It initially launches as a first party, meaning it's part of the website normally. And so what it does is it helps with the speed of the website, which is always important because everything's loading at once. It's not having to make extra calls afterwards to all these other parties. And then the other thing is it helps with security as well because there's a bunch more rules that kind of come up. It's not anything we have to be concerned about, but it makes it safer for all parties concerned, having it all load in the back end.
If I'm not mistaken, there's no difference in all of the other things that need to be set up. The difference comes in using the server side method of getting it loaded onto your website. So this
Yeah.
doesn't eliminate anything else that we've talked about setting
No.
up. It really just is a different way of having all of this implemented to get onto your website.
Yeah, or even I would say even simpler than that. It's just an extra step. It's just you because you still have to do a regular web container of Google Tag Manager, and then it's going to be wrapped in a server side one. It's basically that, and beyond that, and then there's one extra little step for doing the Google Analytics that I'm not going to get into here, but it's the only part that's a little can trip you up if you're not familiar with it. But I'll post a guide on how to set it up in the comments because I did find a really helpful one if you just follow it step by step. Honestly, that's
Yeah,
all I'll
is
send
that
you.
the one you sent me the
Yeah,
other day? Yeah,
yeah,
I look forward to reading that because I mean, I think I'm going to be having to do a lot more of this in the near future for implementing and stuff like that. So I actually look forward to reading that and getting into possibly a future topic to
yeah, yeah.
get this across to everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. And we are definitely up on time. But yes, I will get that posted and I'll have it in the one for the Cyberpunk Marketing Mixer Facebook group. If you aren't a member of it, feel free to come over to there and will talk about we talk about fun things like this every Thursday. And I believe what do we have
Next week is
is
the monthly roundup.
it's the monthly one. Okay, awesome. Just on time, guys. Thank you.
It's you to leave.
Yeah. And okay, so my name is Phelan.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, and see you next week.